What is up, my nerd familia, and welcome back to another episode of Games y Mas, the podcast where we talk about all things board games, video games, and a little bit of pop culture. I'm your host, Vic, and today I have the privilege and honor to have Mr. Mark Bates from Infinite Pie Games. Mark, thank you so much for joining us here on this podcast on a little humble corner here on the west coast of our of the podcast world of board gaming. So honored to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us here. He is
Thanks
the
for having me, Vic.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much for joining.
It.
Yeah, of course. I know you're a busy man. You got things going on, and the fact that you took some time here on your Saturday to join us here, I'm very, very honored here. Mark is the creator of two awesome board games, one called Sovereign Chess and another one called World Cup. Great games. You guys should go check those out. We'll leave links and descriptions of anything that you want to plug in, Mark, at the end of the podcast. So I'll put it all in the description for where they can find your games. Or you can even check him out. He makes appearances at StrategiCon. If you're in the LA area, he makes little showcasing his games. So you should go check that out as well. But I'm very excited to get to know you a little bit more here and to talk to you more about your games and the creation of Infinite Pie Games. So with all that being said, pull up a chair, grab some dice, y acompáñeme a jugar. Mark Bates, everybody. Oh man, I'm very excited to talk to you about these board games and just pick your brain a little bit about these games, especially Sovereign Chess. Sovereign Chess is the one that really caught my. World Cup is cool. I gotta get into it more. I gotta get my copy from you. But I'm really interested about Sovereign Chess here. But before we get into the whole meat and getting to know you a little bit more, we're gonna get to know you a little bit more. But asking our icebreaker questions here, Mark. We always ask our first time guests these questions here. And for those of you listening that have been with us when we've been posting vlogs and following our YouTube channel, we did a vlog where we went to StrategiCon. What was that 2 years ago, Mark? I think when we first met.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half ago. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, a year and a half ago. Where we did a vlog where we asked around people one of our icebreaker questions, and so you can catch his answer there. But we'll go ahead and repeat that answer, or it could have changed. Who knows? You might have changed your from the time that we asked. So go check out that vlog. You can find us on our YouTube at Games and Must Pod. But yes, we're gonna go ahead and ask these questions, Mark. It's a two-parter question. Feel free if one of these parts you feel like you're not more expertise on, you don't have no knowledge on, don't worry, we can move on from there. But the two-part question is, the first one is, what is your favorite board game of all time? Again, for those listening, first-time listeners, board games, we're constituting dice games, card games, tabletop games, all of that within the category. And then the second part here, Mark, is what is your favorite video game of all time? Now, again, we're not just limiting to only just maybe Xbox or PlayStation or computer game. We can even include arcade games. Even an arcade game you like going to that was very memorable to you, we can include that. For board games, again, as a fellow board gamer, I'm pretty sure it's kind of hard to narrow down to just one. So I always give the option of a top three. If you'd like to do a top three or top two, And the same thing with the video games. If you feel like you can't narrow down with one, I'll give you a top three. So, Mr. Mark, the floor is yours. What are your favorite board games and your favorite video games here? Go ahead.
Yeah, boy. I mean, asking what's a favorite board game is such a wide-ranging question, especially for people in the board game community that just like a lot of different elements of what's out there. I'll give you three. I feel like I probably told you one when we were at the con, but let me give you three. And they're, maybe, well, I don't know if they're a tad more on the current side, but they kind of maybe three that had the biggest impact on me. So
sure.
So number three, I really enjoy Lords of the Waterdeep.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
it's a great worker placement game. I mean, it really is just kind of at its core worker placement game, and it's been beautifully themed. Some other people in my circle, I wasn't a big Dungeons and Dragons person growing up. A lot of people in my circle were a lot more,
right?
But I like the theme of Lords of the Waterdeep. They themed it really well. Okay. But it's just plays as a great worker placement game, and it expands really beautifully. So the way that you can kind of add places for your workers to play and kind of add some incentives to that, I think Lords of the Waterdeep is a really brilliant game. I probably played it more on the iOS port of that, which is really nice. I mean, it's a great thing that we have in our world that we have things like BGA, Board Game Arena, and various developers that make iOS or Steam or web-based versions of games. I'll talk about that in a few minutes with Sovereign Chess, but
for sure.
That have those versions because they really give people access to the game without having to necessarily go and either find a physical copy or actually be in a space with other people. So I've played, a lot of, you play some of these games with strangers, especially on Board Game Arena. But I have some good friends that even are local, but we just don't necessarily have time for a game night. And so it's great to be able to play online like that. So Lords of the Waterdeep is my number three.
Okay.
Um, excuse me. My number two during this is actually before the pandemic, was in fact Pandemic. Um,
Oh,
and
okay.
and so I played Pandemic a few times with my family, and then in whatever it was, 2017, 2018, they came out with Pandemic Legacy. And
Yes.
and for the rest of my family that just don't play board games as much on a regular basis, it was a really nice break in to show them how legacy games worked.
Right.
It had a story theme, and it was, and of course, we've only played through season one. I know now they have a
Mhm.
season two, and I think they even have a season zero.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Correct.
but really beautifully done,
Hmm.
and coincidentally, I mean, I guess I will say coincidentally, we finished in early February 2020, literally about a month before
Before.
the actual pandemic broke
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so they did it. They did it again. A pandemic itself is just it's a fun game. I'm a math professor by profession, so
Hmm.
it's got a lot of what's called graph theory, just the way the
Got you.
board is set up, and ways that you can only move from certain cities to certain cities.
Okay.
So it's got a lot of actually deep math behind it, believe it or not. But I
Really?
thought they did a
Okay.
good job going to the next level. I know that the legacy theme is something probably that started with Risk Legacy. I feel like that was the first big
Mm.
legacy game that hit. But
Yeah.
this idea of having a game, I have really good friends that have Pandemic Legacy, and of course their map looks totally different from ours in our house, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I
Right.
like that. So Pandemic Legacy, or Pandemic in general, number two.
Right. Okay.
And then number one, I mean, this is so niche, but I really enjoyed the Star Trek customizable card game. So
Hmm.
that was a product that was put out by Decipher it started in the early 1990s.
Okay.
It went through maybe into the early to mid 2000s before I think Decipher might have even folded. But they did a really nice job. I'm a big Star Trek fan. They did a nice job theming the cards of that game. Of course, it came with a lot of, I mean, maybe a little bit like Magic or something like that nowadays,
Yeah. Right.
where
Okay.
you kind of get the bloat of so many cards. But then, of course, you have special types of tournament settings. Of course, in Star Trek, you have a draft version. You have, of course,
Hmm.
they had a Deep Space Nine sub
Mm.
genre, so you could just play with
Okay.
Deep Space Nine cards, and it got to be pretty crazy, but still kind of a fun thing to look at,
Yeah.
and really an interesting way to see how you can take cards and have this basic idea of a game. In the Star Trek customizable card game, the basic idea is you get points by exploring certain regions
Okay.
that all have, or completing missions is what they'll say in the game,
Right.
and,
Right.
and overcoming certain dilemmas. But then of course the cards bend the rules in 75,000 different ways. So
Yeah. Yeah. For
so,
sure.
um, so that was a lot of fun. I know that there are a lot of other card games out there. If they're collectible card games or trading card games, I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
different labels on that. But
Okay.
but that was my favorite. So what? Number three, Lords of the Waterdeep. Number
Well,
two,
for the
Pandemic Legacy. Number one,
one
still kind of deep in the weeds in Star Trek: The Customizable Card Game.
card
So
game. Okay. Nice. Excellent selections for sure. I haven't tried out the Star Trek one. Really do want to check that out. I know. Remember when we chatted first time and asked you that question? Yeah, you said Lords of Waterdeep and Star Trek was your top one,
mm-hmm.
which is great. Awesome. Like I forgot what the name was of the Star Trek, but now that you mentioned, I'm like, because I've been thinking about like, oh, like I want to try that Star Trek game that Mark talked, but I literally forgot what it was. But now that you brought it up, now I'm gonna look it up. Let us know in the comments, to anyone that's listening, if you've had any experiences with these games that Mark's has played. Let us know your fun experiences playing those games. But now we'll move on to the second part of the question, Mark. If you have any thoughts on this one, if is your favorite video game? Do you have any favorite video games?
Oh yes, yeah.
Anything console or computer wise, or even
Oh
arcade
man.
games?
Now
Anything?
listen, I just want to tell you, I grew up in the Silicon Valley, and this is how far back I go with video games. So
Okay.
literally, my first video game system was an Atari 2600. Okay,
Atari. Okay.
that's gonna peg me as far as age goes. You might be able to tell I'm just a tad bit older than like 25, um, but growing up, where my family lives now, they're still about a mile or two away from Apple headquarters. But more importantly,
Oh.
we grew up about a mile or two away from Atari headquarters,
Oh,
and so
wow.
that
Okay.
was always a big thing growing up when Atari video games came out.
Mhm.
Um, so many great games over the years, and just kind of seeing the development of video games. Man, one of my old school arcade games that I really enjoyed was Robotron. It was back of the
Robotron.
day. It was called Robotron 2084. I think it came out in 1984, so I think they
Okay.
pegged it 100 years in the future. Who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows if we'll be there? We're almost halfway there to
Yeah.
2084 from 1984, but
Yeah.
um, just kind of a crazy game of just all of these robots coming at you, and using two joysticks, right? One that you can
Oh.
move, one that you can shoot. So
Oh,
to
okay.
pick different directions, and so it was a very the people that got good at it, and I wouldn't say necessarily that I was one of those, but the people that got good at it really knew how to kind of separate their brain to know which way to move, but also which way to shoot. That you could be running in one direction and
Mm.
shooting behind you to kind of
Right.
fend off, and of course, like in classic video game fashion, trying to funnel all of your enemies kind of into one line where you could
Mhm.
take them out a little bit easier there. So
Mhm.
um, so many, but of course, so many things nowadays that when you get to things like Steam, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I still find myself in more of the strategic roguelike type of
Okay.
game. I mean, my really, if you ask my favorite video game, it would probably be something like in the net hack genre. I don't know if you're familiar with net.
NetHack, yes. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I've heard of it, yeah, for
So
sure.
it's an ASCII based game. So it's just
Mhm.
a character text based game,
Mhm.
but it's got a huge depth. It really is kind of more of the closer like role playing thing, because you have a character
Yeah,
that develops skills over time.
got you.
And what I love about it is that in every game you have certain potions and certain scrolls, but in every game they'll say, okay, you find a purple potion, but you don't know
Mhm.
exactly what that potion does. There's about
Right.
20 or 25 different things that a potion can do, but you actually have to discover it. You can discover it
Correct.
by take drinking it and hoping that it doesn't kill you,
Right, right, yeah.
or you can discover it by a number of other methods. And so I tend to kind of lean more a little bit towards more strategy based games. You might see that a
Right.
little bit, maybe the games that I develop,
Yeah, for
but it
sure.
is really amazing to kind of see what's out there. And I've got friends that have kind of even dove into like the e-gaming world, and just some of the
Mm.
things that they can do is pretty phenomenal. You can kind of see
Yeah.
why at this stage playing video games can almost seem more like a sport
Right,
than
oh,
just,
for sure.
a fun activity. So
Yeah. No, definitely, yeah, it definitely is, like, yeah, I mean, it's crazy how we've come from, yeah, like you said, Atari, the Pong days and, playing
mhm,
Pac-Man days from an arcade, now to like major like sporting events where these guys
mhm,
very competitive, where you have teams and you have people going to show these arenas and
mhm,
competitions and stuff. It's just crazy. It's a lot of
mhm,
it's why
mhm.
where we came from. But definitely, I've never heard of that arcade game. The name sounds familiar, but I've never actually seen that arcade game. What was it called one more time? The
Robotron. So
Robotron.
yep,
Okay. Yeah,
yep.
I've never
It's
never heard of that one.
it's kind of hard to find old school. There's a shopping mall here. I think maybe in Ventura that has. I think it still has an old style video
Video game.
arcade
Hmm.
that's kind of fun to check out every once in a while for
Oh,
those
for sure.
people that still like dropping quarters into old machines. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's I feel like that's another podcast episode I want to do, or it's like the dying art of arcades. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
man, I remember as a kid. Yeah, I loved going to arcades anywhere, even like arcade cabinets. I just enjoy like just getting to play arcade cabinets. Yeah, putting the
Hmm.
quarters in. I remember like I think whenever my mom would take us to go do laundry, there'd be arcade cabinets there, and I just would
Hmm.
be like, yeah, like I'd love to go. Whenever mom's like, we're doing laundry, I'm like, yeah, because that means I get to play some arcade games for sure. Like I
Right.
ask for
That's
borrow some
exactly
quarters,
right. That's
and
exactly right.
man, I just remember that as a kid, and yeah, I miss arcades for sure. Like it was just a fun time to hang out with friends, try to beat each other's high scores, and
Yep.
challenge each other. Is good. Not that we don't do that now, but now it's at the comfort of our homes, in front of our PCs. But we don't really have that human interaction as much.
I
I
know. I
guess,
know. That's exactly right. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I think I enjoy board gaming a lot, because you're forced to have board game interaction, with, human interaction
Hmm.
with other players
Hmm.
that you invite
Hmm.
over for game night.
Yeah.
I mean, with the creation of BGA and Tabletop Simulator, it kind of also leaning towards more the virtual. But I think us board gamers are it's special because like there's something different about like holding a piece down, or holding a meeple or dice,
Hmm.
something like that in
Hmm.
person rather than playing digital for sure.
Yeah, and,
Um,
and definitely just the interaction of you just kind of get to learn a lot about people when you play games. I mean, I've played
yeah,
games with people that I don't know that well, but you kind of get to learn a lot about their personality,
yes,
both of the
yes,
good and the bad. I mean, everything
yes,
comes out when you're playing this game, which is just kind of an artificial construct, right? I mean, if you lose a
hmm,
game of Pandemic, people don't actually die,
yeah,
but it's fun to just kind of see, even in a cooperative game, it's
yeah,
fun to see kind of how people interact. You always
hmm,
have the issue of what they call quarterbacking, where one person
hmm,
says, "Hey, I'm going to take over the game. I know what you should do, and I know what
hmm,
you should do,"
yeah.
and doing that. And but it's fun to kind of check out what's how different people act in the video in the board game
Board games.
context.
Yeah.
There, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I agree. Yeah, especially you get to see how someone's thinking, especially when we're cooperative or when we're reversing. Like you can see how someone thinks and how they come up with these certain actions or conclusions. It's like, oh, I didn't know you saw it that way. And I think it's a great way to get to know someone else like that. So it's like I think board gaming is a great hobby to get into that can. It's a great way of an icebreaker to like get to know other people and stuff like that. It's a fun
Yeah.
way for sure. Mark, great choices for those video games as well. I mean, I love the old school textile, choose your adventure kind of RPG ish gaming. I mean, I really those were fun. Those were great. And then yeah, the arcade games and then the board games. So there you guys have it, firsthand account from Mark himself, his favorite video games and favorite board games. Let us know, guys. First of all, let us know what your guys' favorite board games and video games are. I'd love to see it on the comments below, as well as your thoughts on Mark's choices. Do you think he had some great choices? Do you have any experiences with his choices as well? We'd love to see it on the comments below for sure as well. But now we'll go ahead and get into the meat of the podcast here. Usually I like to do like a get to know you a little bit of what your projects are done in the beginning of the podcast, and then maybe do some topical things. But this whole podcast is just gonna be me and you chatting, getting to know you a little bit more, your creation of your origins, and then how you got into maybe creating these awesome board games. I mean, Sovereign Chess is a game that I love raving about to all my chess friends that they need to try for sure. And honestly, I'm not saying this lightly, but I feel like that game's going to revolutionize a lot of the chess game.
Mm,
I feel like these big chess players need to get on this because it's a great way to change up the game a little bit and stuff.
mhm, mm,
You said you were a math professor, correct?
mhm, mhm.
Are you teaching at? You said yeah. I remember speaking to you at a university, right? You teach at a university level,
Yeah,
or
so I teach full time at Oxnard College, which is a community college in Oxnard, California. I live in Santa Barbara, so Oxnard is
okay,
about 45 minutes away. A great area, great kind of South Coast area, Ventura, Oxnard, Camarillo, that kind of area. Beautiful, beautiful place to be. Great
hmm,
students there at Oxnard College. I also teach a little bit part time at Pepperdine University.
Pepperdine?
My
Okay.
daughter is just finishing up her degree actually at Pepperdine, coincidentally, but I
Oh,
teach a class or two there.
okay.
So I teach kind of at both places. But yeah, so but I it's interesting because besides the fact that math is a great subject to teach, and
Hmm,
everyone always wants good math teachers.
hmm,
It really you can actually do some pretty good analysis with of board games using
hmm,
math, and there's been a lot of discussion about things like um, making games fair,
hmm,
balancing games,
hmm, hmm.
in things where you have any kind of cards that kind of break the rules, which a lot of games do, not just customizable card games, but there's a lot of math and statistics that are used to kind of to make sure that one card doesn't totally break the game. We
Right,
see
right,
that in plenty of games where one card is way too powerful, and then the next edition they tone it down. Or
right.
in Magic, what they'll do is they'll just ban the card from tournament use. So you can play it at
Yeah,
home and no one cares, but you can't use it in a tournament.
yeah, right.
So, but anyway, so that's what I do in my
Okay,
full time job. I live here
okay.
in Santa Barbara. My wife is a pastor of our local church here, the Santa
Oh,
Barbara
nice.
Free Methodist Church. So she's a
Okay.
pastor, and I help her out whenever I can with that. But yeah, but then a number of years ago, kind of started designing and developing board games.
No, for sure. What kind of math are you teaching, if I ask? Is it like,
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, at the
yeah.
community college, we have done everything from remedial math all the way up through calculus, differential equations.
Okay.
Mostly what I end up teaching is I do a lot of statistics.
Statistics.
Statistics
Okay.
is what I tell my students. I kind of call it the math of everyday life,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
really there's so much in our world that involves polls and surveys and kind of understanding how statistics works, being able to read charts and graphs. and so
Mhm.
that's what I get the privilege of doing at Oxnard.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
If,
statistics.
if
Yeah,
I,
I remember taking stats in the in college too. It was
hmm
fun. It was fun. I was really big into math. I think math was one of my favorite subjects because
hmm
it was like it was one of those subjects where it's like there is no maybes on the answers. It's like you come to a conclusion. And that's your
hmm
answer right there.
hmm
How you get to it. There's ways, but I like this that like the certainty of like this if you have this equation it's going to equal this. There's no
hmm
like, well, let's think about it. Like a lot of
Yeah,
other classes.
yeah,
It's not
yeah. It's
philosophy where you
great.
can like come up with different conclusions. So yeah, I think the highest I got was like calculus 2, if I remember from
Okay, yeah,
when I
yeah.
went to
Good
CSUN.
stuff.
Don't ask me now because I don't know. It's been
Yeah, don't worry
it's been
about it.
I
No
don't know how to
pressure.
find derivatives. I forgot about derivatives and the cosine
hmm
tangent geometry. Yeah, yeah, I mean, I could probably get it back, but it's over my head now. But I like what you said about when we talked about board math and board games. I mean, yeah, I think it's I mean, even from the basic of just counting how many points you have, that's
hmm
that's math
hmm
right there. You already
hmm
so, and I think
hmm
math does have a big impact in video games, in board gaming. Yeah, exactly, like statistics and probabilities and like what's gonna break the
hmm
game, what won't break the game, which is I think it's just very fascinating to me about that, how it's like, especially like creators as you, like coming up with games that you gotta have to figure out like what will break it, how many times the iterations you've had to run it to see is
hmm
this gonna work? Is this not gonna work? Or how are different many occasions of like, can I place this piece here? Especially when it comes to chess, because chess is a complex game in itself, easy to learn, hard to master. But now you're adding different variables and components. So like you're the way you've thought of, how many queens can I have here that won't destroy the game, or how many rooks can I have here and
hmm
stuff like that. And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. 'Cause we'll talk a little about that, but
Yeah,
with
yeah.
with the math aspect, yeah, that's very very interesting. Before we dive into your games, I am curious. So, I kind of you're kind of already answered a little bit. I kind of understand the meaning of this, but Infinite Pie Games. That's the what we say, publisher or company
Yeah,
that you've
yeah. Kind of
created
the
here.
studio. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The creation of that. I wanted to ask the origins of it, but I mean, you kind of already alluded to like you're a math teacher already, so perfect with Infinite Pie Games. But if you want to maybe give a little bit more of a background of Infinite Pie Games and maybe, yeah, your creation with it, and yeah, let you
Yeah,
go take
yeah.
over.
I mean, it probably was. It probably was. Well, now I think, kind of when I look back on the timeline, I mean, probably exactly 20 years ago. So that would be
Oh,
2005.
okay.
Um, I've always enjoyed games. I like trying out different games. I probably, my wife will tell you this. I probably have more games in my closet that I've bought, that I've
Yeah.
opened up the rule book to check out the rules of the games, than the games that I've actually played. Right.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it's just, it's always interesting. It has always been interesting to me to see kind of how a game works. And there are some games where I can look at the rules and I can already say, yeah, this game isn't going to be fun. It isn't going to be interesting. It's going to be broken. I mean, you can kind of see some people that have not put a lot of thought into how a game it works. But of course, there are plenty of games out there that are beautifully done, and
Right.
where
Right.
where the rules are very clever and that things work consistently.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't know. One time I was just kind of sitting around saying, so then I really enjoy chess, and so I'm very very deep into chess variants, and so there
Hmm.
are plenty of, well nowadays there are plenty of websites. I used to buy books that had different chess variants. So
Okay.
so there are chess variants with a variety of what are called fairy pieces. So fairy pieces is a general term in chess for a
Okay.
piece that isn't a regular piece on a chessboard. So you might
Hmm.
have, for example, grasshopper chess, where when you move the grasshopper, it's a special piece called a grasshopper. When you
Hmm.
move it, it has to jump at least over one other piece before it can land, because it's
Mm.
a grasshopper, right?
Right.
Um, you have some pieces that move like a queen or a knight, so you can see it might be
Oh.
more powerful than just a queen. But I kind of started from the premise of this, saying I really like different colors. I kind of like a lot of things that have color. I don't know. I like my Rubik's cube that I have in my
Yeah.
office that has a lot of colors on it, right?
Right. Right.
And so but I noticed that the only way that you could have a chess game that had more than two colors is if that game had more than two players. And so
Mm.
course, 4-player chess, you have 4 different colors. That could be red, yellow, blue, or green, or that can be whatever colors you want because it's a
Right.
4-player chess game.
Mm-hmm.
But so then I kind of started saying, well, look, if I wanted to have a lot of colors on a chessboard, but only 2 players, then how would I do that? And
Mm-hmm.
early on, what I realized I would have to do is I would have to make so in sovereign chess, you have a regular set of white pieces and a regular set of black pieces, and then you have all of the different colors that are all around the sides of the board, and
Right.
those are all neutral pieces. And so then what I did was in the middle of the board, I put colored squares. And
Mm-hmm.
if you landed on a colored square, then you got to control the pieces of that color. So
Mm-hmm.
you could be the player playing white, but if you land on a red square, you could control the red pieces. And if your opponent landed on a green square, they could control the green pieces.
Right.
And pretty quickly, I had the basic idea. I mean, about 90% of sovereign chess. I mean, I'm not boasting about this. I put it together in about 15 minutes.
Oh wow.
But then,
15
but
minutes.
then
Okay.
what I did was I did a ton of play testing.
Okay.
And I started play testing with a friend just to see if he thought it was interesting because he also likes chess. And he said, hey, this is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then you spoke of Strategicon, which is this Strategicon's right, the larger name for this game convention that happens 3 times a year in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I made some prototypes and took it to the convention and just went to the open gaming area and said, hey, does anybody want to try my game?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people that said, hey, this is cool. I had a few people that said, wow, this is overwhelming. And I
Yeah.
had a number of people that started saying, hey, where can I buy this?
Oh
And
wow.
when you have about 100 people that ask you where you can buy the game and you say, well, I actually really haven't made it. I just have this prototype. Then you realize that maybe you should probably make the game. So
Yeah. You got
um,
something.
so from there, I created Infinite Pie Games as kind of a little tiny corporation game studio,
Okay.
and did a manufacturing run of Sovereign Chess. And so the Sovereign Chess in its physical form got delivered in about 2018. I did a print run of 500 games, ran through that in about 3 years. Did a second print run of 1,000 copies. I'm really kind of on the low end of that, and we're working right now. I mean, literally, I'm probably as I speak, I'm probably down to my last 30 sets of
Oh
that.
wow. Nice.
I brought
Okay.
I brought 20 of them to the con and probably sold 15 at the con. Um,
Nice.
and then we're just on the verge of trying to get things together to do a third print run. There's some
Oh.
kind of just it's a big logistical process to get everyone says, oh, well, you just go to China and have it made. And that is true. We have ours made in Hong Kong, but
Mm.
man, there's so many steps to actually getting a board game made
Yeah.
um, from
Definitely.
that. In the meantime, I really love World Cup soccer. I'm a big
Mm-hmm.
soccer fan, and I really enjoy the World Cup specifically, which is going to be coming to the U.S. next
Next
year,
year. Yes.
along
Oh
along
my
with
goodness.
Canada and Mexico.
Yep.
I'll be fair, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So I created a card game called World Cup where you could play the whole World Cup tournament in a single evening. Had a lot of fun play testing that with friends, both who liked soccer and who didn't like soccer, and really enjoyed it as
Oh.
kind of like a very simple around the table card game. In its basic form, you just play a card and draw a card, and it kind of plays out all of the games in the World Cup. Um, and so I put together a few expansions for that I've already printed.
Yeah.
Um, got that backed on Kickstarter. So if you look
Oh,
up
nice.
World Cup or World Cup card game on Kickstarter, you should see that. And
Awesome.
I'm hoping to get a new expansion design for next year's World Cup, which of course we'll,
Right.
we'll have to wait till we see all the teams that are in there. I mean, the U.S. and
Right.
Mexico and Canada already qualify, but
Yeah.
putting that together for next year. So that's kind of the short version. So I created Sovereign Chess. When I decided to have it manufactured, I put together the studio,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gives me a platform to do some other fun activities from
Yeah,
that.
definitely, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that origin story. Yeah, Infinite Pie Games. I like your little slogan where fun never ends. That's really cool. Little like
Mhm, mhm,
double take because
mhm.
pie never ends. 3.0
Pie
for
never
whatever.
ends.
But okay, so Infinite Pie Games, and so far you said you have 2 projects on there that are you have Sovereign Chess and you have World
Mhm,
Cup.
mhm,
Maybe towards the end of the podcast, if you have any future projects you want to sneak
mhm,
peek, we can talk about that as well.
mhm,
But I do
mhm,
want to talk about Sovereign Chess and World Cup here, mainly Sovereign Chess. Um, because I don't have World Cup and I need to get World Cup, and we'll get an order going here soon for
Yeah,
that because I do
yeah,
want to play,
that's
that,
okay.
especially since it's coming. With Sovereign Chess, okay, so you say you created it in 15 minutes. And for those listening that are wondering, what is Sovereign Chess? Well, Sovereign Chess is a different take on chess. Or actually, you know what, Mark, if you want to go ahead and give us a little rundown, what is Sovereign Chess? For those that are listening that are wondering,
Yeah,
okay, you piqued my curiosity.
yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, if you go to sovereignchess.com or you go to infinitepigames.com, you'll kind of see some pictures of the board. It's played on a 16 by 16 board, so it's basically, you kind of think of four chessboards put together there.
Hmm.
But like I mentioned, each play there in its origin, it's a two-player game. So
Hmm.
so one player has a regular complement of white pieces, another player has a regular complement of black pieces. All of the pieces move like regular chess with a few little tiny variations. So pieces only have an eight square limit.
Okay.
So pieces like rooks and bishops and queens can't jump across the board in
Awesome.
one
Right.
turn, but they
Okay.
can always get there in two turns.
Mhm.
Pawns, there are actually pawns of all different colors all around, all around kind of the inside edge of the board.
Mhm.
So pawns always move into the middle of the board. On the board, there's a kind of an outline black 4x4 area in the middle of the board. If a pawn gets inside that area, it promotes.
Okay.
So if you think about promoting in chess, you have to get a pawn to the other side of the
Mhm.
board. And that's a lot harder to do because usually the pawn gets blocked or captured somewhere along the way.
Right.
Occasionally, someone will promote a pawn,
Right.
but in sovereign chess, it's really a little bit easier to do, a lot more dynamic. I see it happen fairly regularly in sovereign chess games where someone will promote a pawn, and and then of course you have these ideas of these neutral armies. There are 10 other colors of pieces around the
Mm.
board.
Yeah.
When I manufactured the game, I had this plastics manufacturer overseas. I actually went through countless what they call Pantone chips. Pantone's kind of a color system because I
Okay.
wanted to get the really good color palette. I think one thing that Vic and other people notice when they see the game in person is that the color palette is really beautiful. I mean, I really
Yeah.
wanted to pick those colors very specifically, so it had a really nice looking color palette.
Yeah.
But again, and then all of those colors have about what I call a half complement of pieces. So all of those colors have four pawns instead of eight. They have a queen, a rook, a bishop, and a knight.
Okay.
There are only two kings, the white and the black kings, and then all those other pieces. But then again, by landing on squares of certain colors, you use that to control the pieces of that color. So then,
Mhm.
like Vic was saying earlier, if you control three different colors at once, which you can pretty
Yeah.
easily, then you can have three extra queens at your disposal. And I
Yeah.
I say all the time, look, I'm not actually really that good of a chess player. At the last con, I had an 8-year-old that literally beat me at my own game.
Nice.
So part of the joy of developing games is that you can lose to people.
Yeah.
Um, but if any decent chess player, if you can get three or four queens at your disposal, can do a pretty good job closing out a game against an opponent. But that's of course the joy of the game. There's a lot of different strategies. I mean, one of the great things about me um, playing taking the game so much to game conventions is watching different strategies and different good strategies that
Yeah.
people use in order to try to win the game. Obviously,
Right.
people will do things like they'll try some traditional chess openings, which in almost most variants don't really work out the same way.
Yeah.
But it's fun kind of watching things that they
Mhm.
can do. There's kind of I kind of keep hearing this rule in game design that says you want to make your game as simple as it can be,
Mhm.
but no simpler,
Okay.
right? So
Interesting.
you
Okay.
can't you can't just make it, it's not just a super simple game.
Yeah.
Chess is complicated, and a chess game with 12 different colors, including white and black, though that's going to
Yeah.
be complicated. But you
Right.
want to make it as simple as you can. And
Right.
so that was really an important part for people who are watching this that are thinking about developing their own games. And I've had a few people reach out to me, "Hey, I'm looking at developing a game. What do you think about this?"
Right. Right.
And one of the first things I'll say is, very kindly, like, does this rule really matter? This rule
Mm,
is hard to understand. Do you really want this? Well, I really like this rule. And
right.
and you know, we don't like to, well, there's a kind of a crass term called killing your children. That's kind of a crass term. But
Yeah.
people get so tied to what their idea of what a game should be. That's great if you want to play it with you and your friends, but if you want to publish it and sell it, it's got to be something that most people can have access to and can understand.
Right.
And so that's really important in this process, right? It's really important to be able
Hmm.
to know how to do that in a way that still keeps your core idea of what you want the game to be, but
Right.
also listens to other people when they say, "This is confusing. This doesn't make sense. I don't like this rule. I keep forgetting about this rule." And that's a really important part of the development. And that was a great part about going to the convention
Mm,
is that people would be really honest and tell me,
yeah.
yeah, I don't get this rule. It doesn't make sense, like that. And it just to help make your game better. So,
Right. For sure. No, definitely. Yeah, definitely. When it comes to sovereign chess, obviously creating the pieces, I want to know a bit about your mindset when, with the different neutral armies. How
mhm.
did you, like, come up with like I guess the ratio or like the balance of like, okay, if I have on each color can have one queen, one rook, and one bishop, or a knight.
Mhm, mhm.
How did you come up with like uh these colors have these pieces like that without like it throwing off the whole game, stuff like that? Because I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure if
yeah,
like if you land on a blue score, you get four queens all of a sudden like that. I'm pretty sure that would like
yeah,
mess it up. So how
yeah,
did you come up with the balance for that?
yeah. So each color just does have the same balance of pieces. Now the exception is there are light and dark gray armies. What I call light gray is what I call ash, and dark gray is what I call slate.
Okay.
They're kind of stuck in the corners of the board. They're a little bit more powerful because each of those armies have two queens, two rooks, two bishops, and two knights. But
Mm-hmm.
it kind of takes longer for them to develop those pieces. One of the rules of sovereign chess is that you can't just capture neutral pieces. At the beginning of the game,
Mm-hmm.
all of the neutral pieces are well, they're neutral. They're not
Yeah.
controlled by you. They're not controlled by your opponent. You can't move them,
Yeah.
and you can't capture them. So you
Got you.
can't at the start of the game say, yeah, I don't like this army that's next to me. I'll just start taking out the pieces because the only way you can capture those pieces is if your opponent happens to control that army. Then they're, of
Right.
course, they're fair game.
Hmm.
So, so there's the game. The way I set it up, the game has perfect 180-degree symmetry. So there's a little math term for you there. So
Yeah.
if you flip the board around, all of the arrangement of pieces are the same. Now the colors all are matched up in kind of two different pods, but
Right.
the colored squares in the middle of the board do have 180-degree symmetry. So each player has the same access to each color. So you
Okay.
think about the fact that maybe like the red square is three squares ahead of my one of my rooks, and the other red square is three squares ahead of one of your rooks, right?
Right.
So it's kind of always a race to kind of see where we want to go with that. And so, but that was really important, right? I wanted there to be kind of balance among the different armies so that it wasn't just let's say, a race to get to the purple army, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, whoever gets to the purple army is going to win the game automatically.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
that to happen. So,
Got you.
so the game really does have, I think, a pretty good balance as far as that
Yeah.
goes. And so, yeah.
No, yeah, it does. It really does. Like I said, that was when I bought my copy and I was setting it up, I was just trying to figure out like, okay, what would be like the color to go to, or what would be the strategy where like I can just control the whole thing or thing. And I'm like, no, it's really well balanced where, white and black have equal opportunities to take control of these colors and to make the game pretty even. Just the strategy is, getting which colors to take control first or which ones to use up on a turn, so you can get advantage and stuff like that. When you're designing the board, the placement of these colored squares on the board, was that something also that you had to kind of think about where it's like, how even is it for like, is it unfair because white can get closer to purple than black or something like that? Did you have to kind of like implement that? Like, what was the process of that as well?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I set it up so that, I mean, I wanted to make it so that it looked pretty beautiful in the middle of the board. I mean, the other thing is that because the colored squares are all in the center of the board,
Yeah.
it does draw the action out to the center there, right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
in traditional chess, the center of the board is, of course, it's a smaller board. It's 8 by 8, right?
Yeah.
But in traditional chess, the center of the board is vital because if you can control the center, then you can control a lot of the pathways
Paths. Yep.
to going through, and you kind of constrict your opponent.
Yeah.
In sovereign chess, kind of what I lovingly say, there's a little bit more room to breathe, right? There's a little bit more
Yeah.
space to move your pieces. But at the same time, you have to go out into the center in order to get control of another color. I see some players that they get very conservative. They don't want to control too many colors too quickly. But if their opponent can control a lot of colored armies, you all of a sudden think about, hey, regular chess is 16 pieces versus 16 pieces, but now if you have 16 versus 50, then
Yeah.
that feels like a hard battle. So that's why
Yeah.
controlling other colors is really
Very important.
important. We were talking about kind of people's mindset and how they play games. Um, when you control the red army, you can use those red pieces to attack your opponent, and you can even sacrifice those red pieces. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if I'm playing white and you're playing black, if I take one of your black pieces with my red queen, even if I lose my red queen, I just kind of don't have the same mindset. Like, I'm really sad about that because
Yeah.
it's not actually kind of the queen that's in my original army. It's just a white queen. It's just a red queen, and I
Yeah.
can move off of red on a later turn and just ignore the
Yeah.
whole red army. But
Yeah.
I've captured one of your pieces in your black army that you're never going to get back. So,
Yeah, definitely. No. Yeah, like last or earlier this year at the con, the gentleman that was with you that was playing with
mhm,
everyone else, he put a really like perfect perspective of when I was playing the game. I went with the mentality of, okay, I'm gonna have my traditional openings that I like. I was trying to go for the London opening. I'm gonna go do this, but then I was ignoring the fact that you had these other neutral armies. I'm like,
mhm,
in my mind, my thinking was, I'll get to them. I'll get to them as soon as I just want to establish my army first. And
mhm.
and I forgot the gentleman's name that was playing that I was playing with.
Yeah.
Uh, he went straight away. He started controlling the sides and he started moving those slice pieces, and I was like, oh snap, I forgot. Like he was getting the upper hand the whole, like, the beginning of the game. He's getting the upper hand. And I had to rethink my mentality of playing chess with this sovereign chess, because it's like now you're adding different variables, and I think that's genius. I think that's awesome. You did something awesome here, Mark, with that. Because yeah, now it's like, no, it's not just, it is regular chess, but it's more than that. Like, now everything
Yeah.
that you've learned, you got to expand now. You got to
That's
add
right.
different variables. And I love strategy. I love chess is one of my favorite games to play as well. I love playing so much. Just the different openings, closings, end games, your
Mhm, mhm,
tactics, your
mhm.
set pieces, and stuff like that. I think it was awesome. And now you're adding this, which adds even more to the palette. And I'm always, I want more, I want more and more. So you created
Yeah.
something great with there with Sovereign Chess. I enjoyed
Thank
the
you.
colors are great. My only gripe that I would say with this one is just the colors. With the differentials between like the dark purple and like the blue or the dark blue.
Mhm,
Sometimes
mhm.
I'll get them confused. I'm like, wait, I don't know which colors are which. That's the only gripe. But I'm like, it's
Yeah.
nothing crazy with that. I'm
It's
pretty sure you've
it's
heard that before.
Yeah. Well, and it's good at the con because at the con you're usually in rooms that have really great lighting. I mean,
Yeah.
it is true if you're playing at home and the lighting's a little dark. Of course, many colors can kind of fade in a little bit and
Hmm.
look very similar.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, it's hard because that's really one of the balances of trying to make a game that has
A lot of
12
colors.
different colors is you want
Yeah.
them to kind of contrast well enough. I
Yep.
wanted a
Yep.
light gray that didn't look so white that I
Yeah.
got confused for the white pieces and so on like that. But yeah, I appreciate the observation. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
No, yeah, yeah. But honestly, it's not even like a deal breaker. I was just like, wait, which, and I had to look at it. I'm like, okay. But once you set them up, you're done. You're like, okay, I'm good to go.
Yep.
I already know what's what, which colors are what, and stuff like that. So moving on to your next game that you have, World Cup. Big soccer fan as well too, or people call it football. Um,
Mhm.
big,
Football. Yeah.
yep, big fan. What made you go with going a card game for World Cup here?
Yeah, that's okay. So this is another great story. So I was just planning on just sticking with Sovereign Chess and just kind of writing that out as long as it went. And I forget. I mean, probably this was maybe before, probably 2015, 2016.
Hmm.
I was looking online on some stuff. I think I was on eBay looking for something, and I came across this board game called the World Cup game, and it was a board game that was manufactured by a guy in England,
Okay.
and it was a game where you could basically play the whole World Cup tournament in one sitting. So it'd take a couple hours, but you'd play through the whole World Cup tournament, you get to a champion.
Right.
Each player what basically the idea is that each player would pick. I think it was 3 or 4 or 5 different countries. So you're playing multiple countries, but your goal
Right.
was to get one of your countries to win the World Cup.
Okay.
Um, I picked up a copy of the game for like $20 on eBay.
Okay.
Obviously, it was used. Someone had used it and put all the pieces back and everything. The
Right.
game had 2 cardboard game boards. It had a deck of specially printed cards. It had custom dice. It had little plastic soccer balls that stood on stands. And then it also
Oh.
had pressed cardboard tokens, like on a punch sheet or something.
Okay.
And I looked at this and I said, "This is a brilliant design." Talk about like good design, right? This is a brilliant
Right.
design. It had great rules. I said, and so then I don't know. I think I went to one of the conventions and I saw another guy had that game. I said, "Oh, I just got that for $20 on eBay." And he said, "That's totally out of print. You can't find it anyplace. I'll pay you $200 for it."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "No, thank you. I'm going to hold on to it."
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden I realize that you can't find it, right? So
Wow.
so I reach out to the guy in England and I said, "Hey, are you ever going to like reprint this? This is a great game." And he goes, "No, I'm not going to reprint it." I did a run of 500, so I had
Mm-hmm.
one of 500. He had actually made expansions, which were just, I say game boards, but they were literally just like folded cardstock pieces of paper for the game boards for the expansions.
Wow.
Um, but he goes, "Yeah, I'm not going to print anymore." And I said,
Oh.
"I would love to remake this game, but instead of doing the cards, the dice, the boards, the plastic pieces, the big box, the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think I could do it all as a card game."
Okay.
And the guy said, "I don't know if it'll work." And I was like, "Well, I'll just try it." And I kind of
Give it a
wanted to
shot.
get permission from him. I got
Mm-hmm.
permission from him to do this. I didn't want to feel like I was stealing his idea. I give
Right.
I give him credit on the box. His name is Sean Derrick, so he's the original um, design of the game. But I've recreated it totally differently, and I think hopefully added to it. So the
Right. Right.
idea is you're playing with it's all a card game. You at the beginning of the game you can pick up to 6 teams. If you have more players, this plays really well with 7, 8, 9 players, so maybe you'll only have
Oh,
3 or 4.
really?
This is a great game to play with a larger group of
Multiple
fans.
players. Okay.
And then basically you have these event cards. So you have a card that represents that says one goal. So you play that card next to a team, that team scores a goal. If you play an assist is half a goal, which doesn't really do anything. But if you add
Yeah.
another assist, then it's a
Makes it one
full
goal.
goal, and that team gets an extra goal, right?
Cool. Okay.
And so then you can play cards like offsides, which will nullify a goal, or
Nice.
you can play a penalty card, which then you have to have a penalty kick. Now, in the original board game, they had a special die that you rolled, and if it landed 5 out of the 6 sides, the penalty kick scored, and the other one it would get blocked.
Right.
What I did was I created a little mechanic where people put cards down, and there are special colored balls on the cards. And
Okay.
if the colored balls match, then the kick is blocked. And so it's a little bit more of a kind of a strategy. What are you thinking? Kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you play out a match day, so you can play up to 6 or 8 games on a match day.
Okay.
You just play around. You draw you play a card. You draw a card. Um, at the end, when the deck is finished, there's a card that says whistle,
Mm.
and the match day stops. You count up the number of goals. You record it on a score sheet, and you go on to
Yeah.
the next match day.
Okay.
And so it plays really much like the World Cup. You play in the regular World Cup, and if you're a soccer fan, you're used to this kind of vibe, right? You play your first
Yeah.
match days and see how everyone does. You play your second match days, and now you're seeing who's getting good. The
Yeah. Yeah.
third match day determines who moves on and who goes home. And then
Mm.
you play those knockout games, and those knockout games are just cutthroat.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
so I really have designed in when you play knockout games, I've designed in extra time. I've designed in penalty shootouts. I mean,
Oh,
I think it's a
nice.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
I I'm getting some traction. I've got a lot of when I did my Kickstarter for World Cup, easily over half my orders came from Europe,
Nice.
and so
Oh yeah.
they really got into it. I mean, I've gotten a lot of really good feedback, and again, trying to just continue by. So then, really, what I'm doing is I'm creating expansions that have new tournaments. So basically,
Mm.
all of the event cards and everything for the to play the game is in the base game. The
Gotcha.
base game also has teams from both the 2018 men's and the 2019 women's World Cup, so you can play both a
Oh.
men's or a women's World Cup.
Okay. Okay.
And what I'm hoping to do is to keep making expansions as new World Cups happen, and maybe even go back and do some older
Yeah.
tournaments.
No, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, if people want to recreate the last World Cup in the U.S. in 1994, they want to recreate. I mean, just older tournaments, they can go
Yeah.
back and do that. So
Awesome.
kind of thinking through some of that kind of stuff there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. You have a lot of potential, a lot of expansibility to for these games for sure.
Mhm.
With creating this World Cup, is there? I mean, I guess you might have thought it too, like maybe also doing like the Concacaf tournament, or also
Mhm.
doing
Yeah.
like
Yep.
so like those more
Yep.
expansions and stuff like that.
Yep.
So has my question is the has the old the what, I forgot the guy's name from London that created the
Oh,
original.
yeah. Yeah.
Ha,
Sean Derrick. Yeah.
has he tried out the new one, the one that you
Yeah, he
played?
does. I sent him some copies when I made it. I mean, he says, very kindly, like, yeah, a lot of my friends still like to play my game. There's a lot of things I like about his game, right? I like the fact that the game board has kind of the schedule of how the World Cup is already set up.
Okay.
And of course, we kind of like what we're used to doing, and so, but he really appreciates the design. My brother is actually who kind of in his regular job works with software, but he is also a great artist. So he did all of the artwork for the event cards for and a lot of the other design
Oh,
elements
okay.
for the game. So my brother's on the box there as well. It's been a lot of fun working with him on this. Andy Bates is his name, and
Okay.
but just really trying to bring kind of a beautiful different element to the
Yeah.
game, and really hopefully down the road as women's soccer continues to kind of pick up a following.
Hmm.
I mean, in the base game, I wanted it to be gender equal. I wanted to have a men's and a women's tournament. I'd
Right.
like down the road to continue to have more women's tournaments that are featured.
Definitely. No, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, that World Cup definitely a game that I want to check out now. Obviously, my love for board games and chess, that your sovereign chess kind of like
Yep.
took over and then got
Yeah,
over,
that's fine. Yeah.
But I do want to try World Cup again. It's a game that I want to, on my next buy. I mean, I'll probably get it from you. The next con, probably if you're at the next con, I'll
Yeah.
definitely
Yep.
snag that up for you or do a couple run throughs because I do want to get that game. That game looks very fun, and I like the fact that you said that you can play with multiple players. You're not limited to like
Mhm.
2 player games or 3 player. You can play
Mhm.
multiple, and I think I love that. I love being able to include a lot of players. That's still more of a thinking game, more of strategy game, rather than it being now we're playing with 8 players. Now it just became a party game where now it's just
Yep.
based
That's
on
right.
luck
That's right.
or social deduction. Nothing wrong
Yeah.
with those games. Those games are
Yeah.
fun, but
Yeah.
as a board gamer, I really like thinking. I really like strategy, which I really love. That it's funny because I was thinking about it with your games. So you have chess, and then you have the World Cup, and I'm like, man, many people might think of, oh, that's like a big turn, a different turn from your chess. Now you're going to soccer. That's a different categories, different like genres. But if you really think about it, chess and soccer are kind of the same thing. When you're
Mhm.
playing, you're when you're playing soccer or football, it's kind of a chess game. You have to think, who am I passing to?
Mhm.
What are the set
Mhm.
pieces? Can we trick this person?
Yep.
So you're thinking a lot like chess, especially
Yep.
as players and
Yep.
especially as coaches and managers. You're also thinking that. So I think it's perfect. I think it aligns a lot with sovereign
Yeah.
chess as well. As we're rounding off this podcast here, Mark, I won't hold you up any more longer here. We want to talk about the future for Infinite Pie Games. Is there any future projects you're looking into getting to? I know you mentioned a lot of expansions that you're looking into for World
Mhm.
Cup, and we've talked sovereign chess. Is there any new board games you're an idea of talking, or that you want to share, or maybe you want to sneak peek? I don't want to give away
Yeah.
details,
Yeah,
but
no, it's
yeah,
okay. Yeah, in Sovereign Chess, so I will mention that Sovereign Chess, that is a two-player game, but I did, when I manufactured even my initial run, I created a four-player variant of that because I had so many
mhm,
people that asked if it was four players that I just made a four-player variant. So when you buy Sovereign Chess, you get both the two-player and the pieces for the four-player version of the game, and I have the rules for both in there.
sure.
What I've also recently created with that, I don't know if I shared this with you, Vic, or showed this to you at the con, is there's a smaller board that I have
Mm,
for Sovereign Chess that's
yes,
a 12 by 12 board. So the only thing that it doesn't use the gray pieces, but it has a slightly different formation of the squares,
hmm,
and it's a little bit of closer quarters game. I call it Sovereign Chess Arena,
yeah,
and so that's a fun game as well. I have a few friends that actually prefer the
arena,
smaller size of the game to the larger game. I mean, a lot of
yeah,
the same, it's all the same rules, so it's easy to pick up. So that is what I when I decided to print the board and sell it separately, I
yeah,
said it was the expansion that's also a contraction because it makes the game a little bit smaller, but it's an
yeah,
expansion to the original. So that's already there. If you go to infinitepigames.com, you can buy that board separately, but you'd want to buy what's called the Sovereign Chess Ultimate Package because it
hmm,
has it
okay,
has the regular game. The board is separate, and you have to have the regular game for the pieces for the board for
right,
that. So
got you.
and then going to World Cup. I mean, World Cup. Looking at expanding for the next tournament. Of course, we'll have to do that probably right around the time the tournament takes place. We might do it after the tournament's over to see how it plays out,
Right,
but that will be the first 48 team World Cup. We're also looking at. I'm also looking at an expansion right now, working on one that deals with some of the early days of the World Cup, both the first men's World Cup, which took place in 1930.
hmm,
I don't know if you're aware, but in 2030 they're going to be having the centennial anniversary of the World Cup. That's going to be a big deal around the world.
oh wow, yeah,
Um, and then also the first women's World Cup, which was held in China in 1991, and which the U.S. actually won. The U.S. actually won the first
oh
women's World Cup, but it was very, very poorly covered in different age, no internet and stuff like that. So, but anyway, just kind of looking at kind of bringing out the beauty of both of those two tournaments as the World Cup has really taken over the world in the last
yeah,
100 years. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, other themes not really looking at much yet, but trying to get some ideas down there, and certainly I'll be sharing those at the con as they come out because one of the things we've talked about a few times is the con is not only a great place to meet people and to kind of sell games that you have or find if you're just walking the con finding games to buy from
yeah,
game developers, but it's
hmm,
also a good place to check out games. One of my favorite things to do is to go to the open gaming area and just watch people try out new games and see if they
yeah,
like it or not.
yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely. No, I agree. Yeah, I'm so glad that we got a chance to meet at the con. Like I say, I love going to Con 3 times a year.
Hmm.
If you guys are in the LA area, you guys got to check that out. If you're into board gaming, that's
Hmm.
a fun con to meet new friends, meet new game developers, check out new games. The flea market is also really cool because you just have like just
Hmm.
a big room dedicated to people just selling all these board games that I've walked
Hmm.
away with a bunch of them. It's very cool. It's very fun.
Yep.
You
Yep.
get to meet awesome creators like Mark over here. Awesome, awesome talking with you, Mark. Thank you so
Yeah.
much
Well,
for
thank
taking the
you.
time to come here. Is there anything you'd like to plug in? Obviously, you kind of already talked about your websites. We can repeat those websites
Yeah.
again. I'll leave descriptions below for you guys that want to
Yeah.
check it out. I can't stress this enough, but go check out his websites. Go check out his games. If you're a chess player, this is a game you should have on your shelf for sure.
And
Sovereign
and
Chess is
you
a
know
fun game. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I also think I've gotten some really nice reviews on Board Game Geek, so that's always good. It's always good to go to Board Game Geek and
Board
just
Game
see
Geek.
how people like games. So both Sovereign Chess and World Cup have some nice comments from
Hmm,
I mean they're not just I mean really most of them are not friends and family, right? They're people that have bought the game or have seen the game and
hmm,
put nice comments. So if you're a person that uses Board Game Geek, both read and if you want to put your own comments or ratings on there as well. I know game designers, especially of our size in the smaller area,
Appreciate them.
really
Yeah.
like seeing those, and
Hmm,
so we
hmm,
appreciate it. And you can also always reach out to me, Mark Mark at sovereignchess.com. That's always a way to reach out to me as well. And
hmm.
I look forward to talking to you about these great games.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us here, guys. You can also find our podcast if you're interested. If those that stuck around and enjoyed this episode, we have more episodes coming along. Or if you want to listen to our past episodes, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen or watch a podcast. We're at Games and Must Pod. That is at Games and Must Pod. Or if you want to ask us a question, you can also email us at gamesandmustpod@gmail.com. Mark, it was such a pleasure and honor to talk to you about these games. If you have something that's great, and I believe Sovereign Chess and World Cup needs to be on everyone's shelves, and everyone needs to enjoy these games, especially if you're a chess player or a big soccer fan. You'll love these games for sure. I know I got to get myself a copy of World Cup for sure, and I'm looking forward to that and playing that and then maybe doing more episodes here. And as well, if you're on BGA, Mark, I got to add you on there because I just recently started playing BGA, so we can get some games going. We can exchange that afterwards offline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with all that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for listening. Y nos vemos para la próxima.